The air was thick with tension as the first Zorvak warship descended from the sky. A towering metal behemoth, black as a starless night, it cast a long shadow over the city below. Its surface shimmered with an eerie, iridescent glow, a stark contrast to the world it now hovered over. Panic spread quickly as the news blared across every screen. Alien forces have arrived. Humanity had always dreamed of visitors from the stars, but never like this. Commander Xyroth, the Zorvak leader, watched Earth from the comfort of his ship's command center. His many eyes gleamed with cold certainty. This would be easy. They'd conquered dozens of worlds before. Humans were just another primitive species. Their primitive technology would be no match for Zorvak might. "Send the message," Xyroth commanded. His voice was a low hum, rich with the authority of one who had never known defeat. On his screen, an image of Earth's leaders appeared, each a mixture of fear and confusion. "People of Earth," Xyroth's voice boomed through every communication channel, his tone as cold as it was final. "We are the Zorvaks, your new masters. You have 1 hour to surrender your world. Fail to comply, and you will be destroyed." Across the globe, governments scrambled. There were no plans for an alien invasion, not one this grand. Humanity's defense systems were a patchwork at best, and any advanced technology it had was centuries behind the Zorvaks. The leaders of the world convened in emergency meetings, unsure of what to do next. "We need to surrender," President Olivia Carter said, her voice quivering as she looked at the assembled officials. "We're no match for them." But in the back of the room, a different voice rose. Dr. Ellen Hayes, a biotechnologist who had long been dismissed as an eccentric. "We can't just give up," she argued. "There's something we don't understand about them. Maybe we have a chance to fight back." Her words seemed reckless in the face of such overwhelming power. Still, she had a point. Humanity couldn't just fold. Some part of the collective spirit refused to bow. The world was watching, and an uneasy feeling settled over the meeting. Was surrender truly the only option? Outside, chaos unfolded. Major cities across the globe fell into panic as the Zorvak ships moved to their targets. The first wave of assault ships unleashed their terrifying weapons, vaporizing entire skyscrapers with blinding beams of energy. Thousands screamed as they fled, their homes nothing more than dust and ash. The Zorvaks moved like predators, efficient, unyielding, and merciless. But as the attack escalated, something else stirred in the hearts of humanity. Amidst the devastation, the very human spirit that the Zorvaks had underestimated began to emerge. In pockets of resistance, individuals and groups of civilians started to fight back. Not with advanced weapons or military strategy, but with something else: grit. In one small town, a group of ordinary citizens, armed with nothing more than old hunting rifles and homemade explosives, managed to sabotage a Zorvak transport ship that had landed to capture their families. Though outgunned and outmatched, their audacity stunned the invaders. The Zorvaks were forced to retreat temporarily, stunned by the unexpected defiance. "This isn't over," whispered General Michael Cartwright, watching the video of the successful resistance on his tablet. "The humans may be small, but they fight differently. They don't give up." Little did the Zorvaks know, this was just the beginning. The morning after the Zorvak assault, the world seemed to hold its breath. Cities lay in ruin, landscapes scared by the relentless attack. Yet amidst the rubble, something stirring was happening. Humanity, battered but unbroken, was beginning to realize that their survival instinct was sharper than they had ever known. And in a hidden corner of the world, Dr. Ellen Hayes had stumbled upon something that could change everything. Dr. Hayes, a once overlooked scientist specializing in human genetics, had always felt that there was more to the human race than met the eye. A few days before the Zorvak invasion, she had been researching the effects of extreme environmental stress on human cognitive and physical evolution. What she hadn't expected was to find evidence of a dormant gene in the human genome, a gene that could accelerate adaptation, particularly when humanity faced existential threats. It wasn't just a reaction to trauma, it was a hidden power. Her discovery wasn't met with the fanfare she hoped for. No one seemed to care about human evolution when there were more pressing concerns. But as the destruction continued and the Zorvacs closed in, Dr. Hayes made a bold move. She gathered a team of scientists and military strategists, secretly working on a theory she called the cognitive surge, an unprecedented ability for the human mind to rapidly evolve in the face of crisis. At first, the team's efforts seemed futile. The Zorvacs were still overpowering them. Yet, the more the human resistance faced defeat, the more they adapted. The strategies that had been attempted in the early days of the war were being re-examined, modified, and rapidly improved. Technology once thought impossible was now being built in secret labs, thanks to the ingenuity of the human race. From homemade EMP devices to improvised aircraft that could dodge Zorvac laser fire, humanity was slowly gaining an edge. But it wasn't just technology. The humans' ability to think in unpredictable ways was becoming their greatest weapon. Where the Zorvacs relied on precision and overwhelming firepower, humans were developing ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. Guerrilla tactics became increasingly effective. Cities that had been obliterated became battlegrounds where human cunning outsmarted the alien forces. In one key battle, a small band of resistance fighters in Paris managed to disable a Zorvac warship that had landed to capture civilians. The ship, thought to be impenetrable, was suddenly vulnerable to human sabotage. Led by a young engineer named Ava, the group infiltrated the ship and used their knowledge of basic engineering to trick its systems into a catastrophic failure, taking the ship down before it could launch its devastating weapons. "We're not just surviving," Ava said breathlessly, standing over the wreckage. "We're learning faster than they can predict. We're becoming something else." The Zorvacs, now starting to realize that humanity wasn't the weak prey they had assumed, began to grow more cautious. Commander Xyroth, still confident in his superiority, ordered a full-scale retaliation. But this time, it didn't go as planned. With each passing day, humanity's strategies evolved. Every small victory gave birth to new, more sophisticated methods of resistance. Dr. Hayes' theories began to take shape, and human potential, once limited, was now being unlocked at an exponential rate. The cognitive surge was no longer just a theory. It was real. Humanity was changing. And the Zorvacs, for the first time since their arrival, felt something they hadn't prepared for: fear. The Zorvacs had never seen anything like it. For weeks, they'd been rolling over Earth's defenses with ease, their high-tech weaponry and impenetrable armor leaving nothing but ruins in their wake. Humanity was supposed to be a footnote, a brief stop before they moved on to conquer other worlds. But as they advanced, something unexpected was happening. Humans weren't surrendering. They were fighting back, learning, adapting in ways that had baffled the Zorvacs. Commander Xyroth had anticipated a quick victory. Instead, he was now staring at the latest reports, watching as human resistance groups, scattered and disorganized, had somehow disrupted Zorvac supply lines. How could this be? How were these creatures, with their primitive weapons, capable of this? On Earth, the human forces were in full mobilization. The resistance had grown from small pockets of guerrilla fighters to a more organized force, one that was beginning to leverage humanity's hidden strength. Dr. Hayes' research into the cognitive surge was now a centerpiece of military strategy. As the pressure on human fighters mounted, so did their ability to think faster, move with precision, and develop new tactics on the fly. The turning point came when a group of human engineers, led by the brilliant young inventor Isaac Torres, hacked into a Zorvac communications network. It wasn't much at first, just a small disruption, a few minutes of scrambled transmissions that delayed a Zorvac assault on a civilian population center. But that small act was enough to send shockwaves through the Zorvac command. The humans were learning to strike at the heart of their infrastructure. Isaac's team had worked tirelessly in an underground lab, using nothing more than scraps of Zorvac technology, old human electronics, and sheer willpower. They weren't equipped to fight head-on against the Zorvek's massive ships or devastating firepower, but they could outthink their enemies. They could cripple their operations from the inside. "This is just the beginning," Isaac said, his voice filled with excitement and fear. "We're not just hacking their systems. We're learning how they think. We're hacking their tactics." The Zorvaks didn't understand. Their strategy was simple: annihilate. Their warships were unstoppable, their forces disciplined and lethal. Yet the humans were adapting in ways no one could have predicted. The Resistance had taken down an entire Zorvak supply station in the Alps, not through brute force, but by exploiting a flaw in the alien technology, a flaw that only humans, with their unpredictable creativity, could have identified. Commander Xyroth called for an immediate meeting of his top officers. They couldn't ignore this anymore. "How is it possible?" Xyroth's voice thundered. His frustration was palpable. "We've seen them attack, evade, and sabotage. We've seen them change their tactics in a matter of hours. What's happening?" One of his subordinates, a seasoned strategist, leaned forward. "They're evolving. Commander, this surge in their cognitive abilities, it's like nothing we've ever encountered. They're not just learning. They're surpassing us." Xyroth's mandibles twitched in frustration. The Zorvaks prided themselves on their ability to predict and control. To be outwitted by what they had deemed a primitive species was beyond comprehension. Back on Earth, human morale was skyrocketing. While the Zorvaks were reeling from the growing unpredictability of their enemy, humanity began to fight back with a new sense of purpose. Every victory, no matter how small, was a testament to their hidden strength, their ability to adapt, to evolve under pressure, to become something far greater than anyone had ever imagined. But this wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. This was a fight for the future of the human race. And as each day passed, the Zorvaks realized that they had awakened something in humans that they could no longer control. The Zorvaks had underestimated humanity's resilience once again. As the weeks wore on, the humans had not only adapted to the alien invaders' tactics, but had begun to outpace them. Dr. Ellen Hayes' discovery of the cognitive surge was no longer just a theory. It was becoming the cornerstone of human defense. With every passing day, humans were learning faster, evolving their strategies, and developing technologies they never thought possible. Dr. Hayes, now fully integrated into the global resistance effort, stood in a newly built command center located deep underground. On the vast screens in front of her, she watched as human forces, once disorganized and desperate, now operated with purpose and precision. The first wave of a coordinated counterattack was about to begin. "We've learned more in these past few weeks than we have in the last century," she said to General Cartwright, who stood beside her, his eyes scanning the battle plans. "We've cracked their communication codes, modified their weapons, and now we've figured out how to counter their shields. We have the upper hand." General Cartwright, the stoic leader who had emerged as a symbol of human resolve, nodded. "It's time we took the fight to them. They've held the offensive long enough." The plan was audacious, but it was humanity's only chance. The resistance forces were going to launch a full-scale counteroffensive, targeting key Zorvak installations. They had one advantage now: unpredictability. The Zorvaks had relied on their superior technology and rigid strategy, but humans were improvising, adapting, and hitting them where they least expected it. On the battlefield, humanity was no longer the underdog. Zorvak warships that once seemed invincible were now vulnerable to human ingenuity. They had figured out how to exploit weaknesses in the alien ship's energy shield by using a combination of electromagnetic pulses and newly engineered weapons capable of disrupting their defenses. The once unassailable Zorvak airships were brought down one by small, fast-moving human fighters equipped with these newly acquired technologies. Isaac Torres, now a key player in the human resistance, had developed a device capable of destabilizing the Zorvak's high-tech energy shields. A small strike force, armed with these devices, infiltrated a Zorvac supply base near the eastern coast of the United States. The team, led by Captain Ava Reynolds, breached the facility under the cover of darkness. "We get in, we plant the charges, and we get out," Ava ordered, her voice steady, but filled with the intensity of the moment. "We're not here to play hero. We're here to make sure they know we're not done fighting." The mission unfolded with terrifying precision. The humans, armed with their new tools and overwhelming determination, sabotaged the Zorvac supply hub. They used their knowledge of alien technology to hack into their systems, shutting down defense protocols and triggering explosions that crippled the Zorvac's logistics network. The explosion sent shockwaves through Zorvac forces, sending them into disarray. Back at the command center, General Cartwright and Dr. Hayes watched the results unfold on their screens. The Zorvacs were reeling, trying to regain control over their supply lines, but they couldn't account for this new wave of unpredictability. The tide of war was shifting, slowly but surely. "They're rattled," General Cartwright said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "This isn't a fluke. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to win." For the first time since the invasion began, the human forces dared to hope. They were no longer the desperate underdogs. They had taken the first steps in reclaiming their world, and every victory, no matter how small, added fuel to the fire of their rebellion. But Commander Xyroth, still far removed from the front lines, knew his forces had underestimated Earth. His intelligence reports had become disjointed, filled with confusion and contradictory data. His empire had always crushed its enemies with overwhelming force. But humans were different. They didn't break. They figured something out. Xyroth muttered to his officers, his mandibles twitching in frustration. "We will crush them, but this will not be easy." The Zorvacs had been wrong. Their first assessment of Earth had been clouded by arrogance, and now they were paying the price. The early days of their invasion had been dominated by an overwhelming force. Yet now, even the mighty Zorvac warships were falling, their invincible shields crumbling under the relentless ingenuity of the human resistance. Commander Xyroth stood at the helm of his flagship, his multiple eyes narrowing as he watched the holographic maps of Earth's defense networks. The reports that had come in from the front lines were incomprehensible to him. He had once believed that the humans were no more than a primitive species, their technology laughably inferior. But as each day passed, the humans were proving themselves to be far more resourceful than the Zorvacs had ever imagined. "Commander, the humans have taken down another of our supply depots," said his communications officer, her voice crackling through the tense air. "Their tactics are unpredictable. They keep hitting us in places we never expected." Xyroth clenched his fists. He could feel his frustration mounting. He had underestimated the human will, their ability to improvise, and most importantly, their capacity to adapt. He could no longer rely on brute force alone. "We will need to change our approach," Xyroth muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. "If we continue to play by their rules, we will lose." On Earth, the resistance forces were emboldened by their success. For the first time in weeks, there was a sense of optimism among the survivors. The Zorvacs, who had once seemed unstoppable, were now on the back foot. The humans were learning how to fight smarter, not harder, using their surroundings to their advantage, and exploiting every weakness in the Zorvac's technological superiority. Dr. Hayes, now working closely with General Cartwright, had made another breakthrough. The Zorvac power cores, the heart of their advanced technology, had a fundamental flaw. It wasn't just their shields that were vulnerable. Their weapon systems rely on highly volatile energy that could be disrupted with targeted electromagnetic pulses. If they could learn to disrupt these power cores, the Zorvac's weaponry would become useless. "This could be the key," Dr. Hayes said, her voice laced with urgency. "If we can hit their core systems, we can neutralize their most devastating weapons. We need to find a way to deliver an EMP strike directly to their capital ship." General Cartwright nodded, his face serious. "That's our next move, then. We need to mobilize the best strike team we have and hit them where it hurts." Meanwhile, on the ground, Captain Ava Reynolds and her team were preparing for their most dangerous mission yet. The Zorvac command ship, a towering fortress of alien metal and technology, had positioned itself above one of Earth's largest remaining cities, New York. The city was teetering on the brink of collapse, and the Zorvacs had begun rounding up civilians for unknown purposes. This was no longer just a military campaign. The Zorvacs were asserting their complete dominance over the planet. "We hit them fast and hard," Ava said, rallying her team. "The Zorvacs are expecting us to hit their supply lines again. They won't expect a direct assault." Ava's team, now equipped with the most advanced weapons and EMP devices that humanity had developed, was ready to infiltrate the Zorvac capital ship. The mission would be perilous, but the stakes had never been higher. As they moved into position, the Zorvacs were already preparing their defenses. Xyroth had decided to take a more aggressive stance. He would no longer allow these humans to disrupt his plans. He issued orders for a full planetary blockade. No one would escape. In the depths of the Zorvac warship, an air of cold determination settled over Xyroth as he observed the human strike force. If they succeeded, it would mark the beginning of the end. But if he could destroy them here and now, humanity's resistance would be crushed once and for all. The two forces, one driven by survival, the other by imperial dominance, were about to clash in the most decisive battle of the war. The Zorvac capital ship loomed ominously over New York, its shadow casting a pall over the city below. Massive, indestructible, and brimming with advanced weaponry, it was a symbol of the alien invaders' might. But today, it would be the target of humanity's most daring strike. Captain Ava Reynolds' team had infiltrated the perimeter of the Zorvac warship, moving swiftly through the darkened streets and alleyways of the city. Their objective was clear: breach the heavily guarded outer defenses and plant EMP charges on the Zorvac power cores. If they succeeded, it would cripple the ship's weapons and shields, leveling the playing field for humanity in the final stages of the war. Ava adjusted the weight of the EMP device slung over her shoulder, her breath steady despite the nerves that ran through her veins. The mission was high risk, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. If they failed, not only would the Zorvacs crush the resistance, but they would also have the power to wipe out the last of Earth's cities. "Focus," she whispered to her team, her voice calm but commanding. "We get in, we hit them fast, and we get out. We can't afford any mistakes." The team moved like shadows, slipping through the quiet, abandoned streets of the city's ruins. The Zorvac warship's energy beams crackled overhead, striking buildings in the distance and sending up plumes of smoke. The world had never felt so fragile. Ahead, the towering Zorvac warship began to pulse with energy, preparing for another strike. Ava's team knew they were running out of time. As they neared the ship's docking bay, they encountered the first line of defense: heavily armed Zorvac drones patrolling the area. Without hesitation, one of the team's snipers, Eli, took the first shot. The drone fell in an explosion of sparks, its systems fried by the precision of Eli's rifle. "Move, move," Ava shouted, as the rest of the team sprinted forward, using the cover of the city's broken ruins to shield them. Every corner was a potential threat, every turn a new danger. But they pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that the future of their world depended on them. Inside the Zorvac ship, Commander Xyroth paced restlessly. His reports from the front lines had grown increasingly disjointed, filled with unexpected setbacks and failures. The humans, once a defeated species, were now becoming a true threat. Their attacks were unpredictable, and their adaptation had become a terrifying weapon. "Have they breached our defenses yet?" Xyroth growled to his officers. "Not yet, Commander," one of his aides responded. "But they're getting closer. We've detected movement around the docking bay." Xyroth's mandibles twitched in frustration. "Prepare for a counteroffensive. We'll crush them before they get near the power cores. The humans will learn to fear us." But Ava and her team were already inside. As they reached the Zorvak warship's power core room, they encountered their toughest challenge yet, a force of elite Zorvak soldiers, guarding the heart of the ship. They had no choice but to engage. The battle was brutal. Human and Zorvak forces collided with raw intensity, the crackle of energy weapons filling the air. Ava ducked behind a metal pillar, her heart pounding as she fired at the Zorvak soldiers. Ili's sniper rifle rang out, picking off enemy troops with deadly precision. But there were too many of them. For every Zorvak soldier that fell, 2 more seemed to take their place. "We don't have much time," Ava shouted as the EMP devices were activated. "Hit the core now." One of her team members, a young engineer named Sam, sprinted toward the central console, frantically typing in commands to trigger the EMP pulse. Just as he completed the final sequence, a Zorvak soldier lunged at him, but was cut down by a swift shot from Eli. "Done," Sam yelled, and in an instant, a wave of electromagnetic energy surged through the ship, sending a shockwave through its systems. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, the entire ship shuddered. Sparks flew from its machinery, and the ship's shields flickered and collapsed. The Zorvak warship was crippled, but the victory was short-lived. The remaining Zorvak forces retaliated with a vengeance, launching a desperate counterattack as the ship's systems began to fail. Commander Xyrot's fury was palpable, but it was clear that his forces were losing control. "We need to evacuate," Ava shouted, her team already retreating as the Zorvak ship began to implode under the strain of its own failing systems. As they raced back toward the exit, Ava glanced back at the chaos they had unleashed. The Zorvaks had underestimated humanity, and now the tide was turning. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The explosion that rocked the Zorvak warship was heard for miles, a violent tremor that shook the streets of New York. The EMP pulse had crippled the Zorvak systems, and their once impenetrable fortress was now a ticking time bomb. Ava Reynolds and her team had just escaped with their lives, narrowly avoiding being caught in the aftermath as the Zorvak ship began to collapse. As they sprinted through the wreckage, their hearts pounded with adrenaline. The mission had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations, but they knew this was only the beginning. The war was far from over, and humanity's struggle for survival had just taken a dramatic turn. "We did it," Sam, the young engineer, gasped, his breath ragged from the sprint. "We actually did it." Ava, ever the leader, kept her eyes focused ahead, but a flicker of pride danced in her eyes. "Yeah, we did, but we're not out of the woods yet." The team reached their extraction point, where a group of resistance fighters was waiting for them. They were quickly loaded onto a convoy of military trucks and sped away from the devastated city, leaving the Zorvak warship to slowly collapse in the distance. The victory felt like a weight had been lifted from their shoulders, but Ava knew this moment was fleeting. The Zorvaks would retaliate. They had no choice but to strike back with everything they had. Back at the Resistance Command Center, the news of the Zorvak ship's destruction spread like wildfire. Humanity had delivered a crushing blow to their alien invaders, but the question on everyone's mind was, could they follow up this success? Could they finally break the Zorvak stranglehold on Earth? General Cartwright stood before a large screen, his face grim as he reviewed the latest reports. The Zorvak were reeling from their losses, but they had a vast empire at their disposal, and the fall of one warship would not break their resolve. The next few days would be critical. "We've got them on the ropes," Cartwright said, his voice low but filled with determination. "But this war is far from over. The Zorvaks will regroup, and when they do, we need to be ready." Dr. Hayes, who had been working tirelessly to decode Zorvak technology, turned toward him. "We've proven they can be beaten. Now we need to push them while they're vulnerable. We have to take the fight to their homeworld." The idea was radical. Earth's resistance was far from unified, and their forces were still scattered across the globe. But the success of the EMP strike had given them hope. If they could replicate this success and keep the Zorvaks off balance, Perhaps they could turn the tide in their favor. We can't waste this opportunity, Dr. Hayes continued. We need to push back the Zorvacs and seize their critical infrastructure. If we take down their command centers, we can cripple their ability to coordinate. We've done it before. We can do it again. Meanwhile, on the Zorvac homeworld, Commander Xyruth was fuming. The loss of the warship had shaken the very foundations of his empire. His pride was bruised, and his reputation among his people had been tarnished. He had always been confident in his ability to crush his enemies. But these humans, these unpredictable, tenacious creatures, had humbled him, and the fear was beginning to spread among his ranks. The humans, they found a way to exploit our weaknesses, Xyruth growled, pacing in his command chamber. They're no longer the weaklings we thought they were. We must prepare for total war. His officers looked uneasy, but they knew better than to question him. The Zorvacs had a vast technological advantage, but the humans had proven themselves adaptable and relentless. Xyruth issued orders for an all-out counteroffensive. Every resource at their disposal would be mobilized to crush the human resistance once and for all. But as the Zorvacs prepared for their retaliatory strike, humanity was already one step ahead. With the information gleaned from the destroyed warship, the Resistance had uncovered the location of a key Zorvac stronghold, one that could turn the tide of the war if captured. We know where they're vulnerable, General Cartwright said, meeting with Dr. Hayes, Ava, and the other commanders. This is our chance. We strike hard, we strike fast, and we show them that humanity is here to stay. The Resistance forces were poised for the next phase of the war, a coordinated global assault that would push the Zorvacs to the brink. Earth's survival was no longer a question of if, but when. And for the first time, the humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to win. The final showdown was upon them. After weeks of planning, the human resistance was ready to launch their most daring assault yet. A coordinated, all-out attack on the heart of the Zorvac Empire. The strike would target their main command hub, a heavily fortified stronghold located on one of their colony planets deep within their empire. If they succeeded, it would cripple the Zorvac's ability to wage war and could finally bring an end to the conflict. General Cartwright stood at the helm of the Global Command Center, flanked by Dr. Hayes, Captain Ava Reynolds, and other key resistance leaders. They had gathered every resource at their disposal, a coalition of forces from around the world, united in a way they never had been before. The humans had been forged in fire, and now they were going to strike back with everything they had. "This is it," Cartwright said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the moment. "We've come a long way from those first days of fear and uncertainty. The Zorvacs may have underestimated us, but they won't make that mistake again. We've taken down their warships, we've sabotaged their supply lines, and now we finish it." Dr. Hayes, scanning the battle plans on the holographic display, added, "The Zorvac Command Center is their last stronghold. Without it, their military coordination will collapse. If we can hit them hard enough, we can break their empire in one blow." Ava, her expression hard with resolve, nodded. "We'll take the fight to them, just like we've done before. We've got the element of surprise, and we're going to make it count." The resistance forces, divided into specialized strike teams, were already on the move, crossing vast distances through space in stealth ships equipped with the best technology humanity had developed. But despite the ingenuity behind their mission, there was no underestimating the challenge that lay ahead. The Zorvacs had entrenched themselves in layers of defenses that stretched far beyond anything the humans had faced before. Every move the Resistance made would be met with overwhelming Zorvac retaliation. Meanwhile, aboard a Zorvac warship orbiting Earth, Commander Xyruth was not unaware of the mounting threat. He had spent the last several days preparing his fleet for the inevitable. The humans were coming, and they were coming with everything they had. They think they can win, but they do not understand the true extent of our power. Xyruth sneered, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "We will crush them once and for all. Send a message to every fleet. We engage at once. No mercy. Despite his fury, deep down, a seed of doubt had taken root in Cyroth's mind. The humans had proven time and time again that they were far more formidable than he had anticipated. But his pride, and the desire to reclaim his lost honor, pushed him to act with ruthless certainty. As the resistance forces approached the Zorvak command hub, the final battle began. The humans had a single shot at victory, and they were determined to make it count. Ava Reynolds led a strike team directly onto the surface of the Zorvak base, while General Cartwright coordinated an assault from orbit. The sky above the Zorvak stronghold was alive with explosions as the resistance forces launched their attack. Now or never, Ava muttered as she ducked behind cover, her team closing in on the central control tower. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the control center, disable the Zorvak's central communications, and prevent them from coordinating a counterattack. But the Zorvaks had prepared for this. Drones, automated weapons, and Zorvak warriors met them at every turn. The strike team fought desperately, each moment more intense than the last. Ava's heart pounded, but her focus never wavered. Almost there, Sam called out, his fingers moving rapidly across a data console. The resistance forces had already taken down several Zorvak ships in orbit, but Cyroth's main fleet was inbound, preparing for a full-on assault. If the humans couldn't complete their mission in time, the tide of battle would shift once more. Seconds felt like hours as Ava and her team fought their way to the heart of the Zorvak stronghold. Finally, after a brutal struggle, Sam managed to disable the central communications array. A massive explosion rocked the control room, but the mission was complete. The Zorvak's military communication was severed. At that moment, Cyroth realized that the humans had done it. His fleets, which had been poised to retaliate, were now disconnected. The Zorvak forces were thrown into chaos. The humans had won. From the control center back on Earth, Dr. Hayes' voice crackled through the communication channels. "It's over, Commander. We've broken their coordination. The Zorvaks can't recover from this." The victory was not without cost. The battle had been long, and many lives had been lost. But as Cyroth's forces splintered, the humans could finally see the end in sight. Ava, standing victorious on the ruins of the Zorvak command center, took a deep breath. "It's over. We've won." The Zorvaks had underestimated humanity's strength, resilience, and will to fight. And in the end, it was those qualities that brought victory to Earth. The humans had prevailed, not by might alone, but through ingenuity, courage, and the unyielding power of the human spirit.